Hello everyone. Today we are talking about how to evaluate expressions. So we already talked about what an expression is. We've already talked about the order of operations and how we can simplify them. So today we're going to talk about what this word evaluating means. So we can evaluate an algebraic expression using something called substitution. So just like in real life when we think about substitution, if we have a substitute teacher, your teacher is out and someone else is replacing them. If you have a sub in a sport, right, someone is coming off the field, someone else is going on the field. If you're substituting an ingredient in a recipe, right, you're taking something out and putting something else in. So what we are going to do is we are going to take our variables, which remember are our letters in algebra, and we are going to substitute or replace them with a value that we are given. And so we're going to practice that, and then we're going to use our order of operations to simplify. When we are first writing these out, though, we want to make sure that we are always using our parentheses when we are doing that original substitution, especially if you're using Desmos or any calculator for this, because it'll really help make sure that everything is being calculated how it should. Let's just take a quick reminder of our order of operations. So remember, the first thing in our GEMDOS is our grouping. Then we do our exponents, our multiplication and division from left to right, and then finally our adding and subtracting from left to right. Let's look at this worked out example before we do some together. So if they asked us to evaluate the expression 8a plus b, they're always going to tell you what the variables are equal to. So they're going to say a equals 5 and b equals negative 10. So when we are evaluating, the first step is that substitution step. So we are literally going to take out that letter. So I'm going to take out this letter A, and I'm going to replace it with whatever value they tell me. So I'm going to take out the A, and I'm replacing it this time with a 5. And I'm going to do that using those parentheses, so I know I'm putting it exactly in its place where it needs to go. Same thing with our B. So we have this plus B is going to turn into a negative 10. So I'm going to take that B out, and I'm going to replace it with that negative 10. So I have something that winds up looking like this. Now I follow those order of operations just like I have been. So again, we don't really have any grouping where we have a big set of things in parentheses. We don't have any exponents, so I'm going to go right to multiplying and dividing. Remember that when this two numbers are written right next to each other, right? So this 8a, or this 8 in the parentheses with the 5, that's really multiplication. There's an invisible multiplication sign in the middle. So 8 times 5 is going to give me 40, and I bring down that plus negative 10. Then I would do my adding and subtracting. So 40 plus a negative 10 is going to give me 30 for my final answer. All right, let's take a look at some examples then together. So we are going to evaluate some expressions using this substitution. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out those variables and I'm going to replace them with the values that are given. So I'm going to rewrite this m to the third, and I'm going to replace my m with 4. So I'm going to have that parentheses that was there, and I'm replacing my m with a 4 to the third, plus I'm going to take this n and I'm going to replace it with that negative 8. So using that substitution. I'm ending those parentheses, and then we divide by 2. All right, so from here, this is a skill that on the SOL we get a calculator for, so you could pause here, go type this into Desmos, which I'll show you in a minute, or we can go through and do the order of operations, so however your teacher would like you to do that. Just for fun, we're going to go through and do the order of operations together. So again, I'm going to look at everything inside this parentheses first, and then I follow that order of operations again. So I'm going to look inside the order of operations for any grouping, then I'm going to look at the exponent, so I'm going to take this 4 to the third, and that will be the first thing that I simplify. So remember, we're taking that base 4 times itself 3 times. So 4 times 4 times 4. All right, which that's going to give me 64. So I have my parentheses, 64 plus that negative 8, all divided by 2. All right, I'm going to keep simplifying that parentheses. So now I'm going to do that 64 plus negative 8, which is really just kind of like 64 minus 8. That gives me 56. All divided by 2, and so that last step is that division. 56 divided by 2 will give us 28. And just to show you what that looks like in the calculator, you can see that when we plug all those in, so we put those parentheses are extra important if you're typing it in Desmos. Parentheses around that m, we're taking that out and putting in 4, taking out the n, replacing it with that negative 8. When we do dividing in Desmos, it automatically makes it look like a fraction, so that's what that looks like on there, but we can see we get that exact same answer of 28. All right, let's look at another one together. So number 2, we're going to replace that x with 12, and we are going to replace our y with 5. So again, I'm going to rewrite that first with those parentheses, so 6 plus our square root of 12 minus 3, and then outside of that radical symbol we have minus R5. So again, let's do this order of operations first. Looking at that grouping, I would simplify underneath the radical first. So I'm going to do that 12 minus 3. So we'll have our 6 plus the square root of 9 minus, oops, not negative, just minus 5. I'm going to keep simplifying that radical. So the square root of 9 is 3. So I would do 6 plus 3 minus 5. And then we would follow our order of operations. So there's no multiplying or dividing. So I'm going to look for that adding and subtracting left to right. So 6 plus 3 brings me back up to 9 minus 5. And our 9 minus 5 will give us 4. Let's take a look at what that looks like in Desmos. All right, again, so using that Desmos with that substitution, we have our 6 plus, we took out that variable and plugged in 12, minus 3, and then minus r, we took out that y and replaced it with 5. Also make sure when you're typing in Desmos that you only have what's under the radical there. So notice that we have that space, and then that minus 5 is outside of that square root symbol. That's very important for typing that in because it will give you a different answer. But again, we wind up with the exact same answer of 4. Okay, moving on to our last two examples. So this time we have 3 variables that we're replacing. So I'm going to take that parentheses and I'm replacing my c with negative 5 this time. So negative 5 plus 7. I'm going to do that minus, and then up top I have that a squared, which we're replacing with 6. So 6 squared minus our b we're replacing with 11. All over c again, which was that negative 5. All right, here we go for our order of operations practice. So first things first, I'm looking for those grouping symbols. I'm going to start with those parentheses over here. So I'm going to take negative 5 plus 7, which will give us positive 2. So we'll have 2 minus everything else. Okay. Now we have another set of grouping symbols, right, with that big fraction. So again, I'm going to treat each part of those fractions of the top and the bottom as 2 separate groups. So starting with this top group, right, I'm going to follow those order of operations again. So I'm going to worry about that 6 squared first. So 6 squared is going to give us 36. I'm going to keep simplifying that top part. So I'm going to take that 36 minus 11 to give me 25. All right, so now, again, those grouping symbols have now turned into that fraction, which we know is division. So we're going to take that 25 divided by negative 5, which actually gives us another negative 5. So we have 2 minus negative 5. And when I do that final minus a negative, that is going to bring me to positive 7. Let's check it in Desmos as well. All right, and we can see our Desmos replacing all of those values with what was given to us in the parentheses, typing it all in just like we see it. We wound up that same answer of 7. All right, let's try the last one together. All right, so for number 4, we are going to evaluate this expression when g is equal to negative 20 and h is equal to 3. So again, first up, we're just substituting everything in. So that g is going to be replaced with negative 20 plus our absolute value of 1 minus 3 to the 4th power absolute value. Okay, order of operations, we're looking for those grouping symbols first. This time it is our absolute value that's grouping things together. Inside of that grouping, we do have an exponent, so I'm going to do that first. All right, 3 to the 4th power, we're taking 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which gives us 81. So I'm going to have that negative 20 plus absolute value of 1 minus 81. All right, we're going to keep simplifying inside that grouping. So I'm going to simplify 1 minus 81 will give us negative 80. So I've got that negative 20 plus the absolute value of negative 80. All right, remember that absolute value makes everything positive. So when I take the absolute value of a negative 80, it just makes it positive 80. So negative 20 plus 80. And we take that negative plus a positive, we're kind of just subtracting. So 80 minus 20 will give us a final answer of 60. And our last step is to just double check that in our Desmos. All right, and as we can see, we get the exact same answer of that positive 60, typing it in desmos, making sure we put those in with our parentheses when we substitute. All right, so that is how we evaluate algebraic expressions with our order of operations, using our desmos, whatever tool that your teacher would like you to use. I hope this helps, and I will see you next time. Bye.